He sat there in court, dressed in a tailored black suit, eyes wide, blue and piercing, as the judge read the sentence aloud. 24 years in prison. The footage from the April 2021 trial of Cameron Herron, a 21-year-old from Florida, quickly swept across social media. But what shocked the public wasn't just the tragic nature of the case, it was the reaction. Instead of outrage over what had happened, much of the internet focused on one thing: his face. Videos from the courtroom, shared across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, garnered thousands then millions of views. People were captivated by Herron's youthful looks and clean-cut appearance. Comment sections filled up with words like innocent, too handsome for prison, and even calls for leniency. But behind all that attention was a devastating truth. In May 2018, Herron had been street racing on Bayshore Boulevard in Tampa, Florida, reaching speeds up to 160 kilometers per hour, 100 miles per hour, more than double the speed limit. At that exact moment, Jessica Reisinger-Raubenold, a 24-year-old mother, was crossing the boulevard with her 20-month-old daughter, Lilia, in a stroller. Another driver involved in the race, John Barano, noticed the pedestrians from afar and tried to slow down. But Cameron didn't. According to court testimony, he made the decision to jerk the steering wheel back and drove straight into Jessica and her baby. They didn't survive. Jessica had graduated just 2 years earlier with a degree in nutrition. She had married her husband, David Raubenold, and together they had planned a future filled with love, hard work, and stability. She was taking time off to care for Lilia, with the hope of returning to work once her daughter got a little older. But that dream died on the boulevard, the prosecutor later said. This tragedy took the lives of 2 beautiful souls and shattered 4 families. No sentence can undo that loss, but we hope that a fair punishment can offer a sense of closure and justice. After the crash, Cameron and the others involved didn't flee. They remained at the scene and invoked their right to remain silent. John Barano accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but Herron rejected any deal. He faced the full weight of the legal process and a long road to trial. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Courtrooms closed, dates were pushed back. For nearly 3 years, Jessica and Lilia's family waited, grieved, fought. The legal battle stretched on. When the trial finally resumed in April 2021, Herron's defense team argued for a reduced sentence. His mother testified that the guilt of that day had never left her son, that he was already paying emotionally for what he'd done. One expert witness even claimed that Cameron's brain was still developing and that his youth had impaired his judgment. He's a smart kid, the witness said. No one could believe he'd do something so reckless. The defense argued that this was a tragic mistake, not the act of a malicious person. But the prosecution had evidence. They showed the vehicle's computer data. Cameron had a documented habit of speeding. Even before the crash, he had been recorded exceeding 100 miles per hour on multiple occasions. The judge took note. In the end, the court ruled that the pattern of reckless behavior could not be ignored. And so, the sentence: 24 years in prison. But the story didn't end there. Despite the conviction, Cameron Herron's case exploded on social media. Clips from the courtroom, posted with dramatic music and soft filters, turned him into a viral figure. His name trended, his follower count surged. At one point, his TikTok-related videos amassed over 22 billion views. Some called him a heartthrob. Others created fan pages. A petition calling for sentence reduction reached tens of thousands of signatures. There were people tagging government officials, demanding justice for Cameron. Despite the lives lost in the crash, it became a strange, unsettling spectacle where a fatal crash turned into a popularity contest. Even Cameron's family members were reportedly harassed by strangers online, both in support and in anger. And the victims? David Raubenold, Jessica's husband and Lilia's father, spoke directly to Cameron during sentencing. "This was not an accident," he said. "You made a choice, and you took everything from us." His words were heavy, measured, full of Heartbreak, because while Cameron might serve his sentence and one day walk free, David and his family would never see Jessica or Lilia again. Cameron's appeal was later denied. His expected release date is May 28, 2044. One of the most surprising moments in Cameron Herron's trial came when a doctor took the stand to defend him. He said, "How could someone so intelligent be responsible for such a reckless accident?" He then argued that Cameron was still too young, that his frontal lobe wasn't fully developed, implying that he lacked proper judgment at the time of the crash. The defense painted Cameron as a good kid who had simply made a terrible mistake, not someone who ever intended to hurt anyone. But what about the families of the victims? For 3 years, they had endured the pain of losing Jessica and baby Lilia, and now they were being forced to sit through arguments that felt almost surreal, if not offensive, to them. This wasn't just a legal debate, it was a deep personal wound being reopened in front of the world. Fortunately, the court stood firmly on the side of justice. The judge rejected the defense's argument. Forensic data from Cameron's car showed a history of repeated speeding, sometimes clocking in at 160 kilometers per hour, even before the fatal crash. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a dangerous pattern. In the end, Cameron Herron was sentenced to 24 years in prison for vehicular homicide. Cameron had expected a lighter sentence, buoyed by his attorney's efforts and emotional appeals. But when the sentence was finally read aloud, his demeanor changed completely. Gone was the calm, composed young man from earlier court appearances. Instead, he stared wide-eyed in disbelief, visibly shocked, as though he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. He later filed an appeal, hoping for a reduced sentence. But the court denied it, and then came the strange part. Instead of fading into obscurity, Cameron Herron became an internet sensation, not for the tragedy he caused, but for how he looked. Yes, really, his trial was live-streamed on YouTube, and soon, clips of it flooded TikTok. The videos weren't centered on road safety or legal consequences. They were focused on his appearance. Viewers praised his model-like features, his tailored black suit, his blue eyes, his quiet demeanor. Some called him too handsome to go to prison. And those words weren't just random comments. They came from millions. Herron's TikTok content, clips of the trial, photos, slow-motion videos with dramatic music, quickly went viral. Some even added glowing filters. The numbers were staggering. Over 22 billion views across TikTok videos related to Cameron Herron. Yes, billion, with a B. His personal TikTok account, despite being wiped clean of posts, gained over 2 million followers. Hashtags like #JusticeForCameron began trending. Fan pages popped up overnight. Some people even wrote open letters, pleading with Florida officials to reduce his sentence. The case had now shifted from a tragic story of loss to a spectacle, fueled by looks, emotions, and viral fame. And for the victims' families, this was another blow. They had already endured unimaginable loss. Now they were forced to watch as the man responsible for their pain was idolized online, not for his actions, but for his face. One thing became clear. This wasn't just a court case anymore. It was a mirror reflecting something deeper about celebrity, justice, and the dangerous power of internet obsession. Alongside the courtroom footage going viral, a wave of online commentary and support videos started flooding social media. By the end of July 2021, hundreds of thousands of posts about Cameron Herron appeared across various platforms. On TikTok alone, related videos racked up more than 22 billion views. The hashtag #JusticeForCameron was viewed over 26 million times. Support pages dedicated to Herron popped up on Twitter and Instagram. These weren't just fan accounts. They became full-on communities rallying behind a convicted felon. Driven almost entirely by his appearance, some of the comments were jaw-dropping. A face like, "That rotting in prison? What a waste. I want to lock him in my heart, not in jail. He's too handsome to be punished. There's only innocence in those eyes." It wasn't satire. These were real comments from real people, many of whom seemed to overlook the fact that 2 lives were lost. On August 4, 2021, a TikTok influencer named Hanakos, with over 594,000 followers, posted a video claiming Heron's sentence was far too harsh. That video alone gathered 22 million views in just 24 hours, with thousands of comments echoing similar sentiments. "He looks so innocent," one user wrote. "This young man doesn't deserve such a long sentence. It's unfair. Please reduce it." On Twitter, the tone was even more intense. One user tweeted, "We won't stop until Cameron is free," another added. "Cameron Heron is the bravest man I've ever known. He's a real king." And just like that, a full-blown movement was born. What started as admiration turned into petitions, campaigns, and organized efforts to reduce Heron's sentence. Nearly 29,000 people signed a petition on a public petition website, calling the 24-year sentence worse than death. Some even tagged the president, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and the U.S. judicial system in their pleas, hoping for national intervention. The obsession didn't stop there. Cameron's family became the unexpected target of intense attention. His mother later shared that fans had begun tracking down personal Facebook accounts of relatives, flooding them with messages of support. Cameron's fiancée was also reportedly targeted by hackers, and her personal accounts were compromised. Some supporters even crossed serious lines. A few managed to obtain the phone numbers of correctional officers, calling and harassing them at their homes, which ultimately led to arrests. At this point, the conversation had shifted far beyond the courtroom or the tragic deaths of Jessica and her daughter. What emerged was something more troubling, a viral phenomenon where appearance overshadowed accountability, and where public sympathy was shaped not by facts, but by facial features. In the face of that baffling wave of online sympathy, David Robinault, husband and father of the 2 victims, took the stand and gave a deeply emotional 45-minute testimony before the judge. "This was a crash, not an accident," he said firmly. "Please keep that in mind." When he turned to face Cameron directly in court, he added, "What matters is that you understand you created a permanent, unimaginable pain, a pain that will never go away." For the victim's family, the grief became even harder to bear, especially as the crime was slowly being minimized online and twisted into something entirely different, a trend, a fantasy, a way to idolize someone who had taken lives. What happened next became the textbook example of a phenomenon known as hybristophilia, also called the criminal crush syndrome. Some mental health experts and social commentators argued that the overwhelming support Cameron received from certain internet communities was more than just admiration. It might be a psychological deviation. It occurs when individuals become romantically or emotionally attracted to people who have committed violent crimes. Hybristophilia generally manifests in 2 ways. Passive hybristophilia is when someone, usually a woman, believes the person they love is entirely innocent. Even if they've been convicted of serious crimes like murder, they genuinely believe their partner has been wrongly accused or misunderstood. In Cameron Heron's case, this became very apparent. After the April trial, several online groups popped up claiming they were fighting for justice for Cameron. The reasoning? Someone that handsome couldn't possibly be guilty. They clung to his clean-cut appearance as proof of his innocence, even while disregarding hard evidence presented in court. Then there's active hybristophilia, a more concerning version, where individuals know the person they're drawn to is guilty of heinous crimes, and they're still attracted. Some even go so far as to help cover up the crime or interfere with justice. In Cameron's case, elements of this second type began to emerge too. Many of his online supporters knew what he had done, but still launched campaigns to reduce his sentence. They signed petitions, pressured courts, and insisted that his actions were somehow forgivable because he's just too attractive. At the time, the phrase "justice for Cameron" went viral across platforms like TikTok and Facebook. Over 10,000 posts discussed what they claimed was an unfair sentence. On TikTok alone, videos tagged with the hashtag had over 26 million views. Meanwhile, total views across all Cameron-related content soared past 17 billion. Some fans even referred to him as the poor boy, or said he didn't mean to hurt anyone, despite the court presenting extensive evidence of dangerous, deliberate behavior. In the end, what this case revealed wasn't just a tragedy on the road, it became a mirror for society's misplaced empathy. The emotional vulnerability of a young, internet-savvy audience had collided with the polished image of someone who committed a deadly act. Justice was bent, sympathy was misdirected, and the pain of a grieving family was drowned out by a pretty face. A growing number of people on social media began speaking out, but not in support of Cameron Herron. In fact, some were furious. "Stop defending a killer," one user wrote. "I'm sick of people saying he should be released just because of his looks. He'll only serve 24 years, while the victim's family will suffer for the rest of their lives. I feel sorry for them." It's a powerful reminder. Cameron's projected release date is May 28, 2044. But then comes the question many quietly wonder: will the charming face that his fangirls adored still be there after 24 years behind bars? That, no one can say for sure, but this case raises deeper, harder questions. Why, in a modern, developed society, is school violence becoming more frequent and more severe? Why are so many young people quick to anger, quick to act, and dangerously quick to cross the line into criminal behavior? Maybe this case holds part of the answer, because when wrongdoing is applauded, when society starts to cheer for the wrong side, that evil begins to seep into our thinking. It becomes normalized until what's clearly wrong starts to feel like a twisted kind of right.